Esta bomba puertorriqueña, yo te la traigo de Cupey, de Vega Baja y de Santurce, de todas partes de Puerto Rico. Esta bomba yo la dedico a toda mi gente de Puerto Rico, a la familia Fontanet, allá en Cupey Alto y Los Mejía en Vega Baja. ¡Que gocen! ¡Sí!
Bomba, bomba, para siempre.
¡Bomba, bomba!
You call this archaeology?
Get out of there, Dad!
We haven't tested it though.
No, we should be good. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Yeah, we should be good though.
Hey. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Well, I guess what is this? 2 weeks in a row?
No, we skipped last week. You were on the whale watching trip.
Yes. Actually, we ended up not doing that because the weather got bad, but we stayed in town anyway and did a whole bunch of other stuff. So, yeah, the weather's been so crazy here. It's been just like we'll have strings of nice days, and then with light winds and just average temps of in the low 70s. And this is Puerto Penasco, Mexico, by the way. We're still down here, and then just like a string of garbage days with just sure, lots of sunshine. I don't see a cloud in the sky. Actually, today's really nice. It's very light wind right now, but then by the afternoon, sometimes it just picks up and it's like 15 to 20 mile an hour winds, steady and just kind of cold and just blowing everything around. And the sand is so fine here on the beaches that it just blows into your eyes. So yeah, we actually went yesterday with a couple of friends out to a beach bar on the east end of town here, and kind of a cool place. And they've got tables with umbrellas, like palapa style umbrellas, grass umbrellas, like over the right on the beach. And we all had to kind of sit in the sun because it was too cold to sit in the shade at noon.
Really?
Because the wind was coming through so hard, and the wind was a little cold, and it was just too much. It was only like it was in the low 60s, but with the wind combined with shade, it was just too cold. So yeah, I mean, I had I had like a sweatshirt on, pants, not shorts or anything, and I was like, what the hell's going on here? So, but anyway, all that weather that comes from around California and then goes up through the Southwest comes here first, as usually just wind. We don't really get a lot of it. Comes from a lot of the rain and stuff down here. It's only rained a few times since we've been here for 2 months, but mostly it's just wind. Like we had to take our clam tent on the outside down and put everything away Monday morning because Tuesday leading into Wednesday, again, 30 to 35 mile an hour sustained winds with 40 to 50 mile an hour gusts.
Oh, that's
just covered everything in sand.
Oh, all right. Because I was gonna say it's supposed to snow again Tuesday for us.
Well, yeah, and that's not super great too because I was just reading an article this morning. I was telling Rachel, my wife, this morning, I was like, hey, we need to do another podcast at some point in the future because the archaeology show is not for just straight history. It's really for things related to archaeology and history. Yeah. But I want like a more history show where we talk about, we just talk about historical things because I was reading an article about the Los Angeles aqueduct. Oh, and neat. I guess off 395 near Olancha, it breached a few days ago for the first time in 100 years. Yeah, it breached because of weather for the first time since it went live in 1913. Well, I mean, it breached due to nature because it's a long story, but the people of Owens Valley were not happy that LA took all their water, so they blew it up a few times. I know, that's what I was going to say, and I didn't know the history of it. And it was like, no, it's like around 1905, there were like agents from the Los Angeles city, and they were going up into the Owens Valley and posing as ranchers to buy up land. I didn't know that, and so they started buying up all this land, and then of course started building the aqueduct once they had all the land that they needed. And in the 20s, it was dynamited like at least a dozen times. They said in the article. And then the last time it was dynamited, you know what year it was?
1932.
1976.
Really? Good for them. I wonder if that has anything to do with because the movie Chinatown with Jack Nicholson was based on that whole incident.
Was it really? I didn't know that. Yeah.
The main bad guy in that story is based on William Mulholland. Oh God. God, one of my favorite history podcasts, Wonderly, actually did a podcast about that.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. The kind of crazy thing is too, I mean, they drained obviously Owens Lake
Yeah.
when they opened up the aqueduct, and I don't know if they knew Owens Lake would drain so quickly, but they rely on obviously snowmelt and seasonal runoffs and stuff like that to keep the aqueduct full.
Yeah.
And Owens Lake has been drained for like 100 years,
Yeah.
and it's been, they said the article, it's been the last like, I don't know, 15, 20 years or so, maybe less, that they've put over $2.5 billion into methods to keep Owens Lake dry lake bed now, the playa, from getting from being too dusty, right?
Yeah.
They've got like dust mitigation measures and stuff like that. But now it's been overrun with water because not only from the breach, but north of the breach, they had to open up the spillways in order to dry the breach area so that they could repair it. Yeah. And so then they flooded all these ranch lands, which couldn't have made people too happy. And Owens Lake basically has water in it now, and that won't last for too long, but it's probably destroying all of the dust mitigation methods they put together over the last couple of decades by covering it with water. So they're not sure. It was just speculation in the article, but I was like, my God, you guys, this is not well planned out. But, here's the thing that really gets me about this. Yeah. We've been watching, what was the name of that show? 1923, which was the sequel to the prequel to Yellowstone.
Yeah.
And one of the plot lines in there follows a Native American who was at one of the Indian schools in South Dakota or something like that, wherever she was.
Yeah.
And and I was thinking about the Indian schools, and we're like, yeah, we all know that's a bad idea. Like, that was a terrible idea. It never lasted. I mean, it lasted for longer than it should have, especially up in Canada. But there are no Indian schools anymore. That was an idea that was put out, tried, and dramatically failed. And yet it's gone. But something like this aqueduct that is purely for Los Angeles, draining water away from the Owens Valley, is still in existence. How is this allowed to be maintained? I mean, it's just like, figure out your water, Los Angeles. Like, figure something else out. And let these people have their water back, because that was a pretty shitty way to take it. And it makes me want to know. This is why I want to do another podcast or something about this. I want to know of other things that have really crappy starts, like really just unethical, crappy starts to them, that people just like take for granted now. It's just like, it's the norm. It's the status quo. It's always been there.
Well, one thing that I'm not sure if the article covered this, because Chinatown definitely didn't, but the reason why LA was way more important than Owens Valley, and everyone pushed this through, including the California state government, is the oil. Like, I remember, I'm not sure if they're there anymore, but when I was living in LA, you could still drive down certain parts of Wilshire Boulevard, and if you knew where to look, there'd still be oil derricks there. Basically, LA is kind of like the Riyadh of California, or the West.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Right. Man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, who knows? Either way, pretty crappy.
You know what I was reading before that, when you're talking about crappy starts and everything? Even though it's a slight stretch, the New York Times this morning was doing an article on how all these Republican-led states are pushing through legislation to loosen child labor laws. And it's like, that was tried too 100 years ago, and yet now here we bring it back. I'm like,
wait a minute, how can they get rid of abortion and try to enhance or try to bring back child labor laws or loosen them? Isn't that like self-defeating right there? Because if you got more kids, you got more labor, right?
Of course.
So I guess that does make sense. I guess have more kids be born, therefore more child labor. There you go. That's a great world we live in today.
Oh, and speaking of Indian schools, by the way, I actually worked with someone who he wasn't that particularly old. He wasn't like 1,000 years old, but he went through his Indian schools, and one of those things that we always remarked on was his handwriting, because it literally looked like a typewriter. And
really?
That's because if he didn't write correctly, he would get beaten. So to this day, he literally he literally still like writes very neatly.
Well, I mean, I guess if you got to look for a silver lining, I suppose, but it's a shitty way to learn it.
I know. God. Well, it depends, because when I was reading this New York Times editorial about child labor laws, there are all these Republicans jumping in saying, why not? Literally, that was their point. It's like, why not? Maybe the family needs help, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, dude, we're the richest country that's ever existed. Why would they need help? Right. Like,
Right.
here's the help. Give them free food. Like, oh my God, who was it? Like, last week, I forget I want to say it was Minnesota or Wisconsin was trying to enact basically universal free breakfast and lunch for children.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the state senators there said he doesn't believe that children need this because he's never met a starving child or family, and if there is a starving child or family, they should just be taken away from their parents. And Ben Shapiro, the conservative Shakespeare, totally agreed. Like, I've never met a poor person. There's no such thing as a poor person. I'm like,
wow.
I
Yeah.
know.
It's totally nuts, man. Just, we're kind of slamming on Republicans right now, and I'm going to continue that, but I'm going to pause for a second because
I know.
we have had a handful of comments into the Archaeology Podcast Network about not only the Archaeology show, but also pseudo-archaeology. Andrew's really ruffling some feathers over there. I don't know if you've been listening to that at all, but
it depends. What was the last one?
What was his last one? I can't even remember what the topic was. Oh, lizard people.
Oh my God.
that was the end of his show anyway. And we got a long email about that where somebody was, and I sent it over to him, and he just was like laughing because I talked to him yesterday. But he, the person was like, "Oh, your liberal views and your downplaying of conservative views, and then you're almost pushing me towards Graham Hancock," and I'm like. Yeah, because your brain is already on a slippery slope to crazy. So, it's not going to take much to move you in that direction. And I told Andrew, I was like, we start getting advertising money, and I was like, your revenue is going to be based on how much hate mail you get. It's like the more hate mail that you get, I'll give you a higher share, because you need to ruffle some feathers. But we've had a number of, I wouldn't say a lot. We've had, maybe a small percentage of the feedback that we do get on TAS. Some people are saying, "Hey, I like your show, but you guys are just like a little too elitist and liberal and critical and forcing your political views and taking down conservative views." And I'm like, yeah, well, this is the Archaeology Podcast Network. I mean, we don't have one political ideology. Every host has their own thing, but we're all generally scientists and probably liberals. So get over it. You know what I mean?
I mean, that's like complaining that you're not. That's like complaining you're not giving equal airtime to like flat earthers.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. It's the same conversation, and it's just like, what is going on? I don't understand. It really, we're not going to change anything. We actually laugh about it probably even more arrogantly when we get on the show next time. And I'm like, hey guys, we're going to be this way. Deal with it. If you don't like it, go listen somewhere else. The Archaeology show is on a rocket ship as far as numbers go.
Oh, really?
And yeah, I mean, we're getting, we're a weekly show, so we're getting higher download numbers than some of the non-weekly shows. But I mean, we're about to crack 30,000 downloads a month.
Oh, really?
Which is the highest numbers any show on the APN has ever gotten, right?
Really?
In a monthly status, yeah. And I mean, even back when Archaeological Fantasies, hosted by Sarah Head, she was our highest rated show back 4 or 5 years ago when she was still on.
Yeah.
And which is, for anybody listening to this, which is what pseudo archaeology was. Yeah. And that was our most listened to show. And she was getting maybe 6,000 to 8,000 downloads per episode. Now I don't think we're getting that many downloads per episode yet. We're getting close. But we have more shows, so we're having more downloads per month. Hers was still only every other 2 weeks. Yeah. So she was around, 15, 16,000 downloads a month, whereas, we're about to crack 30, but we also have twice as many shows a month. So anyway, I'm like, if there's trolls out there or if there's people out there that just don't like our views, I'm like, great, let's start a conservative archaeology podcast. I'll edit it for you and we'll put it on the network. Like, I'm not going to stifle any opinions. If you are an archaeologist or if you're a scientist, you want to have a show on our network, let's do it.
Yeah, but then I would just be inviting like that crazy lady from that crazy professor from San Jose who didn't want to who believed that it was counterproductive to repatriate roommates. If we remember the essays a few years back.
Oh. Well, she's written a ton of books and stuff too, hasn't she? About all that?
Of course.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, why do academics instead of,
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. I just don't understand. But,
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I was gonna say, speaking of archaeology, like I was looking at, I just had this on my desk, and I realized that this thing is actually old enough to be recorded if I left it on the site.
Nice.
It's a long story, but basically that need to see, how can I put this delicately? I have been having a very weather affected winter. Actually, I was about to say weather affected weather, or
Right.
winter affected winter, but that doesn't make any sense. So actually, believe it or not, as soon as my neighbor stops playing the worst rock music, like the most dead rock music ever, because literally every time I start getting ready to because I am actually have started putting together, because I think you followed my new Instagram. That's basically related to what's coming up, which is my new YouTube channel, which is going to be dedicated to photography. And I've got everything written out and everything, and it's just like every time I want to record, suddenly it's just like Bryan Adams or just like the worst rock music. He'll just like play it, turn it up as loud as possible, and I'm like, at first I thought maybe he couldn't hear, but now I'm just convinced that he just doesn't like living in I don't think he lived in an apartment complex before, and he doesn't like the idea of having neighbors.
Yeah, you live in an apartment, you need to put freaking headphones on. I mean, that is just all there is to it. I mean, especially if you live by yourself, like who else is listening to the music? You know what I mean? We're in a very loosely formatted RV park here. There's no lines or spaces or anything like that. You just kind of put yourself wherever you want, and generally in rows, but just kind of anywhere really. And there's a guy, he's probably one of the Canadians. I'm not saying that to disparage Canadians, just like it's a fact. Like most of the front row here is Canadians. They're here from October to April.
Good for them.
And and they just stay there all year long. And some of them even leave their rigs there and pay for it through the summer, so they don't lose their spot. Yeah. So, but this one guy, he's got a one of the outside bays on his fifth wheel flips up like this, and then latches up, and he's got a sound bar attached to it right there. And it's basically facing us. Like I could see it if I look out the window right here. It's got it closed right now because it's morning. But when they have that open, and they've got a huge tent outside that they leave up, like this metal framed, canvas lined tent thing that they can sit in as like their little outside deck area. And they just play loud music at whatever volume they want. And like the whole campground has to listen to it. Yeah, it's so obnoxious. And it's like, what the hell are you doing? At least. And it's sometimes they play music I like. Sometimes they're just blasting shitty country. And I mean, I'm going to say it. I don't like country mostly. I mean, I don't hate country, but most of it I don't really like that much. And
too much time in Nevada.
No, right. And it's just either way, it doesn't matter if I like the music or not. It's incredibly inconsiderate to just play that so everybody else can hear it. It's like, what are you actually doing? This isn't party time for you. And you don't get to decide what everybody else listens to. I don't know how his neighbor, who's 30 feet from him, doesn't say something. I really don't. It's like, well, yeah, exactly. Here, I'm gonna actually, I have the ability. I'm gonna change to my iPhone camera.
Yeah. Oh, neat.
Then I'll show you. This is right out my window.
Yeah.
Oh, don't be blurry. Come on, I gotta make it. Hold on. I don't know why it's blurry. It's not focusing.
Oh no.
Yeah. All right. Let me stop it and start it again. Huh. I wonder why it's blurry.
Oh.
And I can't.
New iOS update?
I had to turn blur my background off. It was being stupid.
Oh, all right. It's because you're using it as your webcam, aren't you?
Yeah. So there is the tent that they have up. And actually, somebody's on the roof there. I don't know what he's doing, but that's the fifth wheel right off the side. He puts up his stupid speaker, and then they sit in that little canvas tent thing out there, and we have to listen to that music. And it makes it look like he's farther away than he is because that looks smaller, but it's not. But anyway, and we got somewhat of our view back here too, by the way. Our view is pretty nice these days. So,
yeah, but there's still that classic GMC RV there.
I know, but we can see over the top of it. So we're taller than they are.
Also, can I just say, looking at those two Class A's next side by side, you realize how much bigger they've gotten in the decades. Because I think that GMC was introduced in the 60s or 70s.
Probably, yeah, more than likely. So anyway, I love being able to do this with my iPhone, by the way. That's super cool. Um,
Yeah.
and it just does a really good job at it. So anyway, yeah,
Oh,
that was fun.
before I forget, we should, mention that I've been doing my annual resume update, and you mentioned something to me that I had never heard of and hadn't seen before about
Hmm.
references, and I think it's like a good thing to go over on a live stream.
Yeah, yeah. We'll bring it up. What did I
Oh
say?
yeah. Well, I was forwarding it to you and for you to look over, and you mentioned that my references, at least one of them was super old, and that
Hmm.
basically companies won't contact people who you haven't worked with like more than like 2 jobs ago, which I had never heard of ever.
Yeah, and I've heard that mentioned. I don't know if there's really a metric on that. I was just mentioning that because it might not even be 2 jobs ago, because it might just be time based, right? Because they want to know who you are now. They want a reference of who you are now. They would prefer it was the last job you work for, right? Not
Yeah,
necessarily your current job, especially
yeah.
if you're trying to jump jobs, but it was your whatever your last job was, as long as it wasn't. I mean, even if your last job was 10 plus years ago and you worked for the same company for a decade, it's probably not going to be a good reference. They're not going to put a lot of stock into it because you're not the same person that you were
That's
when
true.
you were 10 years ago. You know what I mean? So if you've got an old reference now in CRM, it's a little different because as a field tech, you could work with the same person at various points of time,
Of course.
over the last few years. But the one particular reference that I'm talking about, like when was the actual last time you worked with that person? I mean, realistically,
Oh, like
you know what I'm
2000.
talking about?
I mean, 2016 isn't that long ago, is it?
It is though. It really
I
is,
know.
because I mean, that's a long time in this world, especially in CRM, because I mean, you were a really your skill set was probably different back then.
Yeah.
Your knowledge, obviously, if you haven't learned anything in 8 years, that's a problem. But you've learned stuff. You're a
Yeah.
different person. You've done a lot more work, and
Oh,
yeah, it would just be different.
it's interesting because my resume is a lot more impressive than I thought it was going to be. You know,
Hmm.
looking at it now. But
Yeah.
that actually leads into like my next thing, which is that so I was reaching out to people. I was reaching out to people who I've worked with more lately, and
Hmm.
one of those things I came to realize is that you know I'm not going to disparage the company I work for because obviously I enjoy working for them,
Well,
but I
yeah,
will say that
yeah.
a couple of the people we had who had left for different opportunities, like they were basically our company refused to promote them to a level that seemed to be commensurate with the way other companies valued them, because two of the people I contacted literally are now rock stars. Like one person
Hmm.
was literally the only way I knew who this person was because they sent out their schedule, and that was it.
Oh, geez.
And now they're
Yeah.
like the head of like all cultural resources, like all cultural, they're like they're like the regional PI for this company. And then
Wow.
another person is like the head of like their cultural division. So I got to ask, as someone
Wow.
who owns a company, at what point do you just have to admit that either you need to give people more responsibility? I mean, it's hard to say what went on behind the scenes, but like at a certain point, like if you have like rock stars like under your employ, like at what point do you have to like just because they're willing to work for you at a certain level, do you how important is retention of someone like that as opposed to training someone who might come cheaper?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, cost is definitely a consideration, especially if you're, riding a fine line between, having a business and not having a business.
Yeah.
I mean, you do have to think about cost, but in some cases, if you go with somebody that's cheaper but may need training, they're going to take longer to do the job. You
Of
know what I
course.
mean? They're going to probably, they could even cause problems. They could cause things to have to be redone again. And the long-term cost could be more than the short-term cost,
Yeah.
right? The short-term gain, I should say, from hiring a cheaper person. So, that being said, keeping somebody around who's really good, but might be a little more expensive, but is also kind of a dick, that's just like lowering morale for everybody as well. And
True.
you've got to consider that as well. So
Oh,
there's so
but
many
these two people
variables.
were definitely like some of the nicest people I've ever dealt with. Otherwise, they wouldn't be on
Oh,
my resume.
well, yeah, I mean, there you go. But just in general, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of variables into what you do with somebody, how you promote them, you know, and keeping people on. So, and it is a fine line. And I mean, businesses really got to take a hard look at themselves if they're trying to get rid of somebody who is good or not promote them in favor of somebody else they can hire cheaper. If you're trying to save, because I mean, how much does that really save? You know what I mean? If you're hiring somebody for a couple dollars extra per hour, you're saving maybe a few $100s a month, and that might be a few $1,000s in a year. But if your business is in such bad shape that you can't handle a few $1,000 hit, I mean, over the course of a year, then that's poor management.
And at the project manager level, you have to remember that, you know, for everyone out there, you have to remember that it's not just the project management; it's also like the client relations. Like, you know, how many clients have we lost?
Yeah, for sure.
Because I know when I was working on a project, you know, I'm not going to mention the company, but one company specifically offered this person a lot more money because of their contacts and the clients they could bring over.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Oh, you know, speaking of resumes, by the way, and jobs and everything, because I know you guys are talking about job satisfaction in the last CRM Arc podcast, but you know, one thing I wanted to mention, because I saw in Archeo Field Tech, someone was mentioning, you know, about various full-time, I forget what they were asking. I think they were asking about full-time work. And one person responded was, make sure to read your contract very carefully. Like, are you actually full-time or are you full-time, you know, and then there's like little asterisks in your contract.
Right.
You know?
There's definitely different levels of full-time in this business.
Yeah. So, for instance, I was just in Santa Barbara, and, you know, literally the people there when they're full-time, you know, the company I was subcontracted to when they're full-time, basically all they have to do is be at their computer ready to receive an assignment, and they get their full 40 hours. So they can literally be like, you know, they can have their laptop on, you know, and then playing Xbox on their TV the whole day.
Yeah, for sure.
Whereas, you know, other people, let's not mention who, you know, are supposedly on staff and literally cannot collect unemployment because we're not on laid off status.
Right.
You know, so, and, you know, depending on how your winter works out, you know, obviously everyone knows to keep 3 months of paying your savings, but who thinks to keep 6, 8, 9, who thinks to keep a whole year's worth of salary, or who thinks that they're going to have to get a job to support their job? Their full-time, their actual full-time job. Like, you know, it's one thing to like get a job to like support your hobby, but it's another thing to get a job to support your actual job. I was thinking about that this morning.
It doesn't make any sense. Yeah. And it's tough. It's really tough in this business, you know, to try to keep it going. I think that's why, I don't know, people really need they need a side hustle that, that they're flexible with and happy with, you know, and can maybe bring in a little bit of income. But, you know, if you want to stay in archaeology, you either need to find another way to do it or be happy with doing two things every year, you know, like, you know, like being doing some winter activity over the winter and then doing something else, you know, when the archaeology field season kicks up. The idea of having a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday all year long for the next 30 years and then retiring is not realistic.
No.
So, you know,
by the way, I have 2 neighbors who are retired, and one of those things you know, because you always mention like, what do you want to do in your retirement? And one of those things that seems really strange to me is that I have 2 neighbors who are, well, you know, financially relatively secure. You know, they're retired. Actually, I think it might be like 3. And it's interesting because 2 out of the 3, how can I put this? Literally, they sit in their apartments all day and like do nothing other than watch TV. And I'm like, is that really the way you, or listen to really bad music? But is that really the way you want to retire? Because I'm like, dude, if that's retirement, I'd rather just die now.
I mean, some people like that worked for many, many years. I don't know how old they are when they retired, but if you worked for 40 years, which is the typical age, if you like retire at 65, you've been working since you were 20 at the very least, right? Yeah. So,
or if you're a Republican, retire at 80.
Well, yeah, exactly. But you work for like 45 years straight doing one thing. Maybe you do want to spend 5 years just sitting watching TV. I don't know, right? Like that might be what you want to do, and then you get up and you find some other hobby and you do something else. So I don't begrudge somebody who decides that that's what they want to do.
Maybe
It's
it's
not
just
for me.
yeah.
I wouldn't do that. I
No.
don't plan to retire though.
No.
Like I would never retire. I just change what I'm doing, every few years, and
Yeah.
I add something, I take something away, and it's in flux.
I was gonna say that's like my mom. Like my mom got like she won like a nursing she won like the education to get a nursing degree of some sort,
Mhm.
like on a game show, and then so she did that, and she just keeps like getting all these little jobs, and now she's like now she's like a notary for hire, and that's just like like that's the way I view retirement, is like doing other things, not just
Right.
like sitting around doing nothing.
Well, and if anybody happens to be listening to the recording, because there's not too many people online right now, I would say, I mean, obviously we're in the RVing community now, and RVing is not all about old retired people that stay on a post, stay in a park for 6 months out of the year and then go to a different park for 6 months out of the year and just go to two different parks, right? There are definitely those people that do that. There's a lot of people that do that.
Yeah.
But we're in a community, people that is still traveling around doing different things. Some travel more than others, but they're doing things. And I'll tell you what, there's so many services that I would appreciate having nearby. Like one of the things that's hard for me to find, if I could, I would get a haircut probably once a month. If I could do that. That's what I used to do in Reno. I had my place, and I would make my appointment when I got my haircut. I'd make my next appointment for about a month away. And you know which place? That place downtown in Reno.
Yeah, the one that gave you all the what was it? How much free booze could you get from them?
You don't get free booze. You definitely have to pay. Yeah, it's definitely not free. If you get a drink from them, I mean, you're walking out of there paying $60 with your haircut and tip. So,
Ooh.
But anyway, because I think the basic haircut that I get is something special. It's like $40 there or something like that. Then if it's the afternoon and you want to grab a glass of bourbon or something like that, it's gonna be like another $9. I mean, it's not cheap. So, but it's a fun little barbershop. I love it.
Yeah.
But anyway, point is, that's really hard to do on the road because I don't always know. I mean, I generally know where we're going to be, but then, sometimes those plans change and I might forget that I made a haircut appointment with someplace and then I end up just not doing it. And then when we get someplace, a lot of places are just super busy these days and they're understaffed. So you can't actually get a same day appointment unless you go to like a Supercuts or something, which nothing against Supercuts. I just prefer the local barbers more, like a nice barber shop or something like that. Even like the hipster barber shops, they're still local run businesses. There's usually only one of them. And I just try to find those. And again, I don't want to forget I had an appointment and screw them out of a time slot, or something like that in case we move.
Yeah.
It's really hard. So if somebody was at the RV park and they had a sign out that says, barber haircuts, something like that, I would definitely probably do that. If somebody was there, I would go see them and say, hey, let's do this thing. I mean, I know that's difficult to do sanitation wise and license wise because they're licensed, but somebody living in like California could just stay in California and travel around and do just fine doing that. But there's plenty of other services people could do out of an RV park too, to stay active and still bring in an income.
Well, and that's interesting because you see a lot of these, obviously before on YouTube, there were all these, and there still are plenty of like van life is awesome videos. And then there's like a counter narrative to that where it's like, van life is terrible. And I'm like, I couldn't afford it and blah, blah, blah. And the thing is that a lot of these people, like, they don't understand that you have to be like ambitious and entrepreneurial to support a life, van life. You can't just be like, oh, let me look on Craigslist and like, see who's offering remote jobs because, that's not going to work.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it really doesn't. No, there are things that you can do though. Like there's like the Escapers, the group we belong to, there is like a forum or a panel that you can look at for virtual jobs. Like there's a few people kind of running that. And honestly, I've got a few things that are probably going to be coming up with the Archaeology Podcast Network. And then this other kind of ancillary business I do with the company that I work for is kind of my day job. I have a consulting business around that for clients. And as I start to ramp those things up a little bit, I totally am going to go to the virtual nomad RVing and community of of relatively younger people, not people who are retired, but have these skill sets. They have Starlink, they can work from anywhere,
Yeah.
and I want to support that. You know what I mean?
Ooh.
I want to support that and train them up if need be, and or hire
Yeah.
them for certain skill sets. And
Ooh.
I just
I'm
appreciate
available,
that kind of
obviously.
lifestyle. I know exactly. So
I've been available since like November.
Exactly. So
because of my full-time
as
job.
these things start, I know as these things start coming around, it's going to be fun to engage those kinds of people. But it's really tough too, because
Yeah.
I also am probably going to need people early on, especially with the APN, if we start bringing in some income, where it's really kind of part time. You know what I mean? Because we don't even have enough shows. Like if I had somebody who was a producer for every single show, where they helped the hosts find guests, they had regular meetings with them to help them find guests and engage those guests and bring them in, set up the appointments, and then be on the call with them and make sure that everything's running smoothly, everything a producer should do, right? And then the editor takes over after everything is produced and everything's done. They make sure the show notes are in, all that stuff is done in a timely manner. Even if somebody was doing that full time for every single show that we have, including the shows I host, because I usually take care of that for the 3 shows that I'm on, it's still not really a full-time job. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, how much time does Tristan spend?
Well, let's not talk about that. At best, it would probably be 10 to 15 hours a week, I would say, if you were doing the entire network. It would probably not be that much.
I mean, how much work was your social media? Wait, was it social media advertising person getting?
Well, she was not much, and the work that she was doing was dependent upon how much she brought in, right? So she was getting a base. She was getting a base amount of money just to go for contracts, and everything else was commission, right? So, and that's typically how advertising and stuff like that works, right? So you get more money if you bring more things in, but I don't know if she just wasn't very good at it, or if we weren't funneling her enough people, but I kind of expected her to just go find advertisers, but I don't know, she just didn't bring in that much. So she did bring in some, but just not enough, and then she ended up getting a different job. Who is that? Oh, Joby's on. Hey, Joby.
Oh.
Yeah. So do you know Joby? Oh, yeah. I worked with him at in Tonopah was the last time I think we worked together. God, a long time ago before. That was with WCRM out of Reno.
Oh, was that the project where was that the project with the leaky ceiling?
Yes. Although I don't know if it was that exact same project, because we went out there a lot of times for different things, but it's definitely the same town. at the Clown Motel.
Oh my God. That's actually a tourist attraction now, and they fixed it up.
Oh, I mean, it was always kind of a tourist attraction because of the crazy lobby and then the weird cemetery outside. But I'm glad somebody's putting some money into it, though, because it is kind of a cool place.
Oh, and before I forget, because we were talking about resumes and stuff, I remember mentioning to you when I was sending it over, it's like, oh, there are these weird lines around each section. I'm going to get rid of that. Well, I spent the next 2 hours screaming at Microsoft Word because it's basically the way people, for people who are unsure of how it works, basically, if you choose a template in Word, it will, oh, Ethan, hey there. Oh God, my sister lives in Maryland. It's my brother-in-law too. But anyway, basically it'll create little section boxes for you to put your info into. And you're supposed to be able to just click no outline. Wow. And so I was doing that for 2 hours, chasing around these little lines. And for some weird reason, every time I would hit, print to see what it looks like, there would still be lines there. And not only that, but they were random. So obviously there were the dashed lines, and then there were the solid lines, and then it would erase some, but then keep some of the box. And I'm like, what is this? Like, why is this happening? And so eventually what ended up happening is I just ended up spending the next day just recreating it all in Google Docs, and it was fine. And there was no weird issues. And I'm like, God damn, Microsoft, how many decades has it been? You can't solve something stupid and basic like this.
Yeah.
It's like it's like Excel. Say you need to write down, copy and paste a bunch of dates. Yeah. In Sheets. all you have to do, I think, is hit Shift or Control and then scroll down, and it'll copy the dates without like moving it up one day.
Yeah.
Whereas I was looking it up because I was like, this is driving me nuts in Excel. And apparently, after all these decades, Microsoft still doesn't have a way to do that. The only way you can do it is like copy and paste into each goddamn cell. And I'm like, what is this? Why am I paying money for this? Like, why is my company making me pay money for this when obviously Google Sheets is like way, I mean, I know why they do it, but it's like Google Sheets is free and Docs and everything is free. And yet you're making us pay for these basically stupid inferior products.
Yes. I don't know, man. It's crazy what people continue to use, you know, just because it comes with something else or something like that. Yeah.
I mean, at least it's not as bad as Teams, though. Like
Teams is garbage.
Yes, it is the literal worst app ever created. And it's like, you know,
frustrating.
And Google Docs are not Google, but Dropbox has the same level of freaking security, if not better. And yet that's the main reason why people use it. It's like security. And like, well, you mean security as in no one can use it, so no one actually uses it?
Yeah.
And everyone just like creates their own personal Dropbox and just sends it that way.
Yeah. It's nuts. Yeah.
And oh my God, like, you know, like having meetings during, you know, via Teams is like the most pointless thing ever.
I have all my meetings on Teams now, mostly, except for some of my clients, which I use Zoom for because they're my personal clients. But for like my day job kind of thing, they're all on Teams. And, you know, half the time I have trouble signing in or somebody else has trouble signing in. Meetings never start on time because there's always some issue.
Of course.
And I hate, we have to record every meeting. And I hate when you press record, it takes like 30 seconds for it to even start recording. And we all just have to sit there and twiddle our thumbs until the recording starts. And it's like, come on, what are you doing? So irritating. So,
oh, you know what's interesting? You know, because you know, for unrelated reasons, I forget. I don't know if you saw it, but like Archaeology Fieldwork is down, so I went to check it out.
I was just there the other day because we were talking about it, and it was up. They had a job from like last week. Literally this week, I checked it out.
But it, God, was it 2 or 3 weeks ago? Someone on Archeo Field Text mentioned it was down, and you know, I went to check it then, and it was definitely down. But more importantly, I was like looking around at some of the latest job postings, and you know, some of the benefits some of these companies offer is actually a world away from when I would say you and I were both we're at Chambers Group or when we worked at WCRM, which I can now talk about now that they're now gone. You know,
yeah,
I'm not gonna finish that sentence, but you know, because you know, obviously there were many people there who I loved working with. But
yeah,
I was
it's crazy. Yeah, well, real quick, I was wondering, speaking of jobs, do you look on Twin Cairns at all?
Oh, wait, what's that?
Yeah, exactly, right?
Oh, wait, what's it called?
Twin Cairns. And Cairn is just like you would expect, Cairns. Twin Cairns is a website. I know the guy who set it up. In fact, I know the 2 people who set it up.
Ooh.
And they're doing a lot of job data analysis as well and putting out a lot of job statistics and reports and just doing a lot of crazy stuff on the back end. But I was actually going to do some potentially some advertising with them, but for various reasons we decided not to.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how quickly they are gaining popularity amongst job posters. And I was surprised because I was thinking about it the other day and I went there and I was like, my God, there's a whole bunch of like current job posts on here right now. And you have to, it's not an aggregator like Archaeology Fieldwork is. It's more like shovel bums where you have to pay to put your job advertisement on there.
Yeah.
And obviously you don't have to pay to use it to get jobs, but you have to pay to post your jobs.
But it looks like, I'm looking at it right now and it looks like something that someone who has learned computer skills this decade or this century made. Not to talk, you know, not to talk shit about, you know, the more traditional sites, but you know, it's like, come on, man, like, you know, what are they on now? Like, oh God, they're like Yahoo groups or something.
Right.
I'm like, God damn.
I know, it's crazy, but it's yeah, I mean, it was just set up in the last probably 3 or 4 years,
really?
At best. Yeah, it's brand new. So as far as that's concerned, so yeah, it's I don't know, man. It's they're really gaining in popularity, so you should probably check it out. Yeah.
Oh, well, you know, it's interesting because I was going to mention the reason I brought up Archaeology Fieldwork is because I was looking at, like, there's one company I saw in there that was notorious for being like one of the worst companies in like the country. Not quite, not quite, not quite the leave your job in the middle of the night without telling anyone sort of bad, but just like horrible. And now I was like looking at some of the benefits they offer. They're like offering to pay for your for like your grad school, and they were offering, and more importantly, the thing which I want to bring up with the company I work for, because in spite of the fact that I do complain, like I keep telling people, "Are you still there?" And I'm like, "Well, because they paid me." They paid me, and like they always had me busy until this winter.
Yeah.
But basically, one of the things that this company offered, which I think every company should offer, is they offer to cover your Costco membership.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which I thought, wow, that's actually a really good idea. I think personally.
Yeah, because and this is okay. So you're actually bringing up something that we were talking about with the Serum Archaeology podcast, because
really?
Yeah, because we were talking about how the small things that are cheap for the company to do, but are a huge value add for the employee. Like you wouldn't even think like, oh, I wouldn't even know I would want this, but this is amazing, because what the hell does a Costco membership cost? It's like $60 a year for the cheap one. Yeah. For the lowest end one, that's practically nothing for a company to just say, yeah, great, we're going to cover this. Here, go use it. Why wouldn't they do that?
And it's way better than the expired chapstick and cheap keychains we used to get at the company the company we worked for here in Reno. One of them.
Are so stupid. So stupid. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Really dumb.
I mean, the only thing that I kept that was actually any good was the mug.
Right.
Yeah. It's kind of hard to mess that up.
Dumb. I know. And
the thing is, we were like, it's a long story, but I'm not going to say which company it was that when I worked for, but one year I was working for a company and they sent out actually some pretty nice things, and people were like, "Hey, these are pretty cool," and I'm like, "I'd rather have money though. I'd rather just have money." And they're like, everyone's like, "Oh yeah," and I feel like if a company offered a Costco membership to you, that's actually better than money.
Mm-hmm.
Because it might cost the company only $60, but I mean, for like people who normally like are like on the verge of poverty and can't like even afford a Costco membership, how much is that worth to them?
Well, and if you want to do stuff like the branded things that they like to give out, like the little keychains and stuff, like you said.
Yeah.
I mean, depending on how many employees you got, this could get really expensive, but especially if you're a smaller company, I would much rather do something along the lines that fills two benefits. One, you can get your branding done, but two, people are making a lot of money and they need things. So put together get like really nice jackets or something, high quality shirts, something like that. You can put your company logo on it. Don't make it all stupid and flashy, but put your company logo on it, and people will gladly wear it and have an extra jacket now or something like that. Yeah. If especially if they like your company, they're going to wear it, and they're probably going to wear it even when they're not with your company. And if it's a nice jacket, if it's not something stupid and cheap, and they'll just keep on going. I'm fully supporting those kinds of things.
I mean, this year, from the company I've worked for, I got a oh God, I forget the name, but basically those a Carhartt Rain Defender. God, I want to say not a sweatshirt, but does not a hoodie. Yeah, maybe a hoodie, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I get those mixed up because it's the one with the zip up front, basically, and was branded.
Well, yeah.
And,
I mean, when those are nice, yeah.
Although I'm not sure, although if I had to choose between that and a Costco membership, I'd probably take the Costco membership, just because I was like, look at that job, I'm like, wow, that's actually a really good idea, personally.
Yeah. Do you not have a Costco membership right now?
No. I usually, because they're kind of out of the, because I usually go, because when I'm home, I usually don't use my car. I go to the grocery store on my bicycle, and I go to the Rayleighs that's along my route.
Well, it's clear that you haven't been to too many Costco's, because the membership, I would say, like for example, we don't buy a lot of food at Costco anymore. We used to. Food and home supplies like toilet paper, stuff like that. When we had a house, of course we did, but we don't do that here in the RV. We don't have the place to store 15 gallons of mayonnaise. You know what I mean? Like there's just nowhere to put that. but Costco is great for their other stuff.
Oh, I've
I
heard.
mean, first off, alcohol. If you're in a state that sells alcohol, the Costco wine and like liquor and stuff like that and beer, I mean, it's like total wine prices,
Yeah.
usually.
Oh,
And they have, they have their own branded stuff, which is actually pretty good, but then they have other things as well. But then also like, I don't know, I mean, clothing in some cases, like
well,
depending on the season, like camping accessories, chairs, stuff
well,
like that. They're usually
I've seen
pretty high
electric
quality.
bicycles for sale there.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
And more
for sure.
importantly, everyone keeps swearing by their like food court. I don't know. I've never been to one, so I don't know.
Well, they do have some relatively decent food there, and it's almost no cost because they don't make any money off of it by design. Yeah, so you can get like
Oh.
their signature like foot long hot dog or something like that for like $1.50. It's stupid. Yeah,
Really?
you can get like a slice of pizza for a couple of bucks. I mean, they literally sell it at cost. They
Ooh.
don't make any. It's not a profit center for them. So yeah, it's I mean, there's a lot of other reasons why $60 a year, if that's
Yeah.
what it still is, it can't be more than 70. I mean, totally worth it just to get the cheap membership and go. Now, if you went up to like
Yeah.
the $120 or $25 a year membership or whatever it is,
Yeah.
you would only really want to do that if you're going there more often because you get cash back. Like
Oh.
you get
Oh, like an
you
REI.
get so much. Yeah, you get exactly. It's the same thing. You get so much money back. So we used to
Ooh.
get enough money back just to basically cover our membership every year because that's the one we have,
Ooh.
and maybe a little extra because they usually. I don't know if all memberships expire at the same time or if this was just chance for us, but we would usually get that check like a month or two before our membership expired. So then we would just bring it in
Ah.
and use that check to buy our membership for the next year. But nowadays, I mean, we're only getting $30-$40 back because we hardly go to Costco anymore. We were going a lot more with the other RV because we get gas there, but a lot of Costco's don't have diesel, so we're not going there with the
Oh.
RV now.
Oh, really? I didn't
So
know that.
only, yeah, some do and some don't. Most
Mm.
don't though. So from what we can tell, but otherwise, I would go there for the diesel. I didn't like going there for the gas because Costco gas is either the low end and the high end. They don't have middle. And I always liked putting in like 89, but they always
Ah.
had like 87 or 88 and then 91, or something like that. They never have the middle. And I was like, come on, I don't want that, especially for my RV.
I mean, that reminds
But,
me when I was going through Montana and they had I'm like, God, is this?
85.
Yeah. I'm like, is this even enough to run my car or my truck?
I know this is water basically.
Oh,
Yeah, it's crazy.
and oh God, two podcasts ago, you were talking about how to stay in archaeology in the CRM Art
yeah.
podcast, and it's interesting because I'm not sure if you checked out Arc Fieldwork or not, Archaeo Field Text yesterday, but there was a nonprofit advertising for effectively a social media manager as long as you were based in like the Southwest proper, because like everyone's always like Reno's the Southwest or Nevada's the Southwest, so it's like, well, some of it is, some of it isn't,
Why would you need to be based somewhere to be a social media person? You could be based anywhere and still do the job.
Oh, because they would require you to go out and film videos and stuff at some of the sites they can serve.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes
So
sense.
they wanted someone who you didn't need to live where where this nonprofit was based, but you needed to able to get to you need to be able to get to the areas where they wanted to like highlight. It literally was
Was it
posted-
Archaeology? Was it Archaeology Southwest?
Yeah.
Yeah, but they've advertised on APM before. They're super cool people.
But the thing is that,
Yeah.
it's like, there's more ways to stay in archaeology than being a field tech, especially, because for some people who either are not physically able to, or maybe feel like they're a little too old for it, you know, like a lot of people like that tend to ask, like, can I just be put on monitoring jobs and stuff like that? And it's just like, dude, there's other things you can do in this business now that, and obviously companies like every company has if you're like an accountant who wants to retire and do archaeology, maybe you can do, maybe you can approach a company that way or something like that.
Yeah. I don't know.
Stuff like that.
For sure.
Yeah. I thought I'd pick it up just because it seemed like a cool
Yeah.
job. And I wish I could,
I
wish I
know.
would have lived a little closer. I mean, not really, because I enjoy my, I was just doing my taxes and I'm like, that's like my
Nice
favorite
stuff,
time to be
state.
a resident of the state.
Yeah, definitely. I wonder, there's a handful of states that don't have state tax. The only ones I'm aware of are Obviously Nevada, Washington State. I want to say like New Jersey or something. Maybe Florida. I can't remember. There's a few states though that you don't pay state tax in.
Oh my God!
So,
Speaking of Washington, have you heard
mm,
about that Eastern Washington? Oh wait, is it? No, it's oh God, sorry for everyone in Washington, but that Oregon thing, the Eastern Oregon,
mm.
they want basically to become Idaho, and I'm like, man, that is like the most privileged thing I've ever heard. Like, I don't want to move to this conservative state. I just want to bring the conservative state to me.
They want to break off and become Idaho, part of Idaho.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, that would make sense. It basically is Idaho. So,
and a
yeah,
lot of people in the comments were commenting, well, we don't want them,
yeah, yeah,
I mean, I've never
yeah.
been to that part of Eastern Oregon, but I mean, I hear it's not like, the happiest place on earth.
I mean, it's very much like Nevada. It's very much like, southern Idaho. It's very high desert, little population. Very conservative. So, I've
Well,
definitely been through lots of parts of Eastern Oregon.
it's interesting because I love Nevada. Like, I love the state. It's like,
Yeah.
people are always telling me, this is like the worst state ever. I hate working here. In fact, I was remembering,
Mm-hmm.
in fact, let's see, the Society for California Archaeology meeting happened last weekend. And I
Mm-hmm.
saw a picture of someone who I'd worked with, and he was a California archaeologist who had never been to Nevada. And I still remember we were like driving around through like this pinyon juniper forest on the way
Mm-hmm.
to the work area. And he's like, where are the trees? And I'm like, you're looking at them. He's like, no, these aren't trees. And I'm
These
like,
aren't
they're
trees. These are bushes.
yeah. I'm like, and he was like completely appalled that people would actually like, people live here. And I'm like, yeah, you can see the houses right there. Like, because we were
Yeah,
driving,
for sure.
by like a neighborhood, and we were working
my
near
God.
like, our hotel.
Yeah.
And he was like
Nice.
completely
Nice.
appalled. He was not a historic archaeologist and was double appalled that anyone would bother with historic mining stuff. And we're like, of
Right.
course.
Right.
Which is
Oh my
ironic
God.
since as someone who doesn't, I mean, obviously I know my prehistorics very well, but I'm like, dude,
Mhm.
prehistorics is boring as, boring. I mean, I don't have a, I don't have a bleep button, but I'm like, God damn, this is like the most boring crap ever. And like, oh my God, who cares how it broke? Like, why
Right.
is like, what the hell is a hinge fracture? Like, get that stuff out of here. At least
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure about you.
No, I know. I hear you. So, all right, man, we got to wrap it up.
Oh yeah.
So,
Oh,
Um,
let's do the traditional like anything interesting coming up on the APN this week.
well, tomorrow we release on the Archaeology Show the fourth and final episode of our four episode series on paleoanthropology, which has been kind of fun to do. A little bit of a departure from news articles and things like that.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I mean, just the normal things coming up. I don't think anything special. Our next Culturo Share event has been scheduled for May. I don't think we have a hard date on that yet, but we have 3 speakers that are confirmed. And it's going to be on like the archaeology of parenting and like motherhood and things like that, which is kind of cool.
Oh, just in time for Mother's Day.
So I know, pretty much. Yeah. It's in time for Mother's Day, but also the person who we have, Matilda Siebrecht, that does the Tea Break Time Travel podcast. She is having her second child any minute now.
Really?
Like, I think sometime in April technically, but I think she's in the window where it could like be any time.
Wow.
So
Oh,
yeah,
and
so it's good timing for her.
And I did listen to that that episode where she had on God, I always forget her real name, but the vintage Egyptologist on.
Yeah.
That was super interesting.
I know, that was a pretty cool episode. Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool
So-
person.
Yeah. Otherwise, yeah, we've been I will say that, for anybody listening to this, we have been accepted by Zencaster to get programmatic advertising on 8 of our shows.
Ooh.
7 of our shows plus the all shows feed. And I'm still not 100% certain when that's going to start. I know people aren't really excited for that probably
They're not.
because they don't want to hear ads on the show. But I'm pretty excited because it
Don't they already?
has the potential. Well, no, because when we went to the new platform, we basically took all our ads off. So there hasn't been any ads
Oh.
since December because we can't put them on yet because they haven't got the platform in place for us to do that. So none of the shows have had ads since December.
Oh.
But the when that starts, it has the potential to ramp up. And this is what I was talking about, to make the APN basically self-sustaining. So, so then we can start bringing in other people to do other things. But again, we have to wait till all that kicks off and see what it's going to do. And, first and foremost, the hosts get their share of the advertising cost and things like that. So,
but are they all getting like their little meal kits now?
I don't know what's going to be on the show. I don't know what the advertising is going to be, but you're right. It more than likely is going to be stuff like that, because this is what they're doing. They're, usually it's podcasts that get, 50,000 downloads an episode that can qualify for that kind of level of advertising. But they're making those deals with those companies and then spreading it out amongst a bunch of shows. They're saying that if you're getting 500 downloads an episode or more, then you can get advertising. You're going to get a much smaller share, of course, because you have very few downloads. But at least it's something. They're saying pretty much anybody can monetize now once they get this rolled out.
Oh, but then I remember YouTube said the same thing, and then they took away my 34 cents.
Yeah, well, we'll see. So we'll see how it goes. Yeah.
All right.
Anyway.
And although I did mention at the beginning of the show, the only thing I've been working on so far is like basically my photography YouTube channel.
And what is the name of your new Instagram account?
Oh, Space Analog Cowboy Film. It's a very long story, but I was listening to I was like watching a bunch of anime over the winter, and it's just like it's one of those things where it's just like you have to picture it in like an anime voice.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. Well, I hope you have good hashtags on your photos, because that's not a very searchable title.
Surprisingly enough, I do. Like, thankfully, I've gotten a lot smarter about that. And I actually, one of those tips is that I just have like a little notes thing with like all my hashtags written out, and I just copy and paste it into each photo now.
I know that's what we've got for our travel account too. We just have a notes page with different groups of hashtags for things that we're doing, and I just copy and paste it in. Yeah. So
anything interesting going on there? There's always, you guys do anything interesting?
Not really, to be honest with you. I mean, we're still down here, but we are taking a week off the second week of April. We're both taking a week off from work, and we're going to be in the Grand Canyon for that whole week. So that'll be fun. I don't know how much we're going to share or do from there, but at least we'll have fun. So that'll be nice. Yeah. Cool.
All right.
But anyway.
Yeah. Oh, and maybe we'll be here next week. Maybe we won't. It depends.
Actually, we won't. Because we have an 8-hour drive day. That's the day we leave Mexico.
Ooh.
So we're leaving relatively early in the morning. We can't leave too early because the border doesn't open until 8. But we're leaving relatively early, and then we've got to drive practically to northern Arizona from there on Saturday. So it's going to be a busy day.
Also, it's hard to believe it's already almost April, and yet here in Reno, like oh my God, yesterday, I don't even know how cold it was yesterday. I just know that I had all my winter clothes on, including my heaviest winter jacket, and I still felt a little cold.
Yeah. Well, I thought that's what we were going to be going to in northern Arizona, because it was like snowy and freezing just 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
But where we're going, actually, we're going to just north of Phoenix. It's still in the hills up near Sedona, but for the first week, and it's in the upper 60s, low 70s there next week, in the 40s at night, a lot colder than here at night. But then we're going up again to the Grand Canyons up around Williams and north of there, and that's going to be a little bit colder. So we'll see. We might have to bust out our long sleeves again and our colder, warmer jackets.
I mean, I was going to say, there's also Florida. I heard that their low today was like 71 degrees.
If I can avoid it, I'll never go to Florida again for as long as I live. So,
well, there's so much fun going on there with, Mr. DeSantis and Mr. Trump. So,
I mean, even if it wasn't for that, Florida is just filled with mosquitoes. I saw an article the other day about how there's another invasive species from South America that's like taking over down there, and it's like loaded with diseases. I'm like, Florida just needs to get underwater already. There's no point. So, yeah.
All right.
I won't be sad when that disappears from the map.
Oh, that makes two of us.
Yeah. So
although I will be sad for Disneyland, but whatever.
Well, Disneyland is fine. Yeah. So anyway. All right, man. Well, it's been good. Yeah. Thanks to those that joined and everybody that listened to the recording. We'll see you whenever we see you.
Oh, yeah.